Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. So today I have my good friend on here, Joshua, also known as Papa Joe. So welcome, Papa Joe.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here, and I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while because you have an extensive background in the Bitcoin crypto blockchain space.
Yeah.
You've been in it for years. So mind sharing a little bit about that background and maybe just touching on like when you got started?
So I got started in the blockchain slash crypto space in late 2011. I was one of the earlier miners. This was back before there was any such thing as ASICs being used for mining. ASICs have been used for years for all kinds of different things. Somebody who was really, really smart decided, I'm going to program one to go build and point to Bitcoin. And that happened and it worked. But my stuff was all prior to anything with the ASICs. Once ASICs became on the scene, I ended up having a small data center footprint and all that fun stuff. Life happened. I was not entirely, at that point, I just stopped all the mining and all that fun stuff, stopped any progression, if you will, in that space for a while, just because, we started having kids and got married and all that kind of stuff. It was great. Then I came back to it and I was like, okay, this is a very different landscape now. And I just made the decision at that point. I was like, I'm not getting back into mining unless it's on a massive industrial scale, if I have the right people on the bus. And if that happens, then people will know about it. I'll talk about it in the community, but not until it's done and in process or happening and whatnot. So I have lots of designs in my head around what to build from an infrastructure standpoint on how to actually stand up my own mining devices and things like that. I don't mean by buying it off the shelf. I mean like building my own kind of thing.
Gotcha.
That's what I mean, like having the right people on the bus who have the technology and the know-how to go and build and design the circuitry and things like that. Like I have done that in the past. Like I used to build circuit boards and things like that too. So I kind of get my head wrapped around a little bit of what's going to happen with the circuitry and whatnot. But anyways, that kind of got me started in the blockchain space. I started mining. I wasn't mining for the monetary aspect. Back then, there wasn't really much of a incentive monetary perspective.
Had Pizza Day even happened?
Or
like it was right around that time?
If it had, I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
So I was literally I wanted to figure out, I'm a technologist at heart. I've got more than 20 years of experience in IT at this point now. And when it comes to newer type of technology, if it interests me, I'll really dive into it.
Yeah.
Right. For a long time, I was really big into VDI because it makes sense for certain businesses. Once machine learning came on the scene and the AI came on the scene, I kind of dug into those a little bit, but nothing really interested me like blockchain did. Those pieces are pieces of the puzzle or pieces of the pie that make sense to go with blockchain because the automation pieces that are built in with smart contracts, you can do different things and different workflows where you have a smart contract that can be adjusted via a machine learning engine and an AI engine. There's all kinds of different things you can build with it. But
yeah,
back to that, back then it was like, how does this stuff work? How does blockchain work? And I got down into the code and started reading it and stuff like. I don't like coding. I hate coding, but I can read it. I have done a few things here and there. It's not my cup of tea. I don't like it.
Yeah. It's a different mindset.
Probably. A very different mindset. Like the creative juices are there and whatnot. But like I'm extremely creative when it comes to like I connect the dots, see the overall picture, what's going on. And then when at the moment I start to try to get down into the weeds and make that kind of stuff happen for me, I can tell someone to do that, how to do it, what I want done all day long.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to me doing it, I'm like, I just want to go everywhere all at once. It's like I freeze. So
yeah.
It's just like
I got too much. I can't do it all by myself, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the money making mindset, right? That's the boss mindset, the entrepreneur, where instead of doing it all yourself, you outsource it to people that can.
Precisely.
You have the vision.
Right. And that's kind of why, recently about a year and a half ago, I started a business. And it was one of those, it's a blockchain consulting business, and it's designed to do one-on-one coaching, consulting type stuff. But at the same time, it's also, I've done some business to business stuff. I have a few projects on my desk right now that I'm trying to get across the finish line, if you will, from a contractual standpoint, so we can get rolling and whatnot. But once those things are rolling, then it's just a very different type of scenario where it's actual business being built. There's one project you are gonna really enjoy. I think the rest of the community is gonna really enjoy.
I hope so.
Once we, yeah, you will. Don't worry. I think the other one, I'm not even gonna point in any direction of what that one is. But when you guys find out about it, you'll be, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm under NDA for it. So, but as far as what we're doing, when the time is right, everyone will know.
Perfect. I mean, that's cool. I mean, I think the cool thing that you hit on there, and there's a lot to unpack with that.
Yep.
Is that just with that last point is that there is a business interest in this space.
Very
and,
much so.
You know, what the space was for the past, 11 years, right? Since you got involved, it's evolving from that.
Yep,
right?
very much so.
Moving into other realms versus like, let's just see if we can make this blockchain work.
Right.
Let's tokenize some things.
Right.
To like, hey, we actually have specific applications where we think the technology can improve
Yep.
what we're doing or solve problems.
Yep.
Is that kind of what
Sure.
you're
Yes. So I've done different things for different retailers just from a advisory standpoint, if you will. More just like, hey, can you come in and sit down with us, explain, we have this business problem, come sit down with us, explain how you would fix this. And then it's literally just not even laying out a business plan or laying out or whatever. It's literally whiteboarding, explaining, here's your problem, here's the way to get to your solution, and this is how you would do it, kind of thing. And then just kind of leave them with that. So one of them has been trying to get me to come back in to actually lay out a business plan to get that going and whatnot. And I'm like, you guys are going to have to stand up an entire new sector inside your business. You're going to have call it a head of blockchain kind of thing. Yep. And they're going to have to be responsible for ensuring that the implementation of everything gets done appropriately. Otherwise, you're just going to spin your wheels and waste your time.
Yeah. Because these aren't necessarily small projects. And
some of them
paradigm shift, right?
That is a paradigm shift. It's a different way of thinking. A lot of businesses think very centrally, right? And sort of distributed, but not decentralized.
Yeah.
All right. So a distributed system can be, you can have most businesses have a data center, let's say on the Eastern Seaboard, some in Central, and then some on the Western Seaboard, and some other places around the world, like in APAC or in Australia or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are distributed systems, right? Those are distributed data centers. A decentralized system is what blockchain is. Blockchain is distributed and decentralized. It's something that no one else has done before. It's the compute that they have in those data centers, but it's everywhere and yet nowhere. And the reason that the and yet nowhere piece is there is because those nodes, those compute modules, if you will, can be chucked in the ocean and stand up another one in its stead, and it'll pick up where the other one left off. There's automatically too. There's no system in the world that does that except blockchain.
Yeah.
That I know of.
Yeah. Interesting. So that's something we can dive down. But I want to go back. To when you first got in. What you said, you're a technologist, right? You've been in technology for 20 years. How'd you hear about the Bitcoin mining? And like, what was like where were you at? Like what drew you in? Because I had heard about it, but I was in the wrong circles. Like the people around me, like the way I heard it was through the drug dealer route, right?
Sure.
And so I wasn't my circle, so I didn't go into it. So like, what circles were you in that drew you in?
So I was working an IT job. I think I was doing like help desk stuff back then. It was like not like the grunt work, if you will. And then one of the guys' computers I was working on, he had something frozen on his system, and it was a mining software.
Okay.
When you run mining software on a computer, it takes all resources, and the system will freeze. It will be running the mining software, but it will freeze
because it needs the energy.
Correct. Well, it needs all the compute power. So the processor, the graphics card, the memory work maxed.
Okay.
And it was one of those things where it was like he couldn't get it to respond. And it was nothing. I was like, what are you doing? What is this? He's like, this is a mining software. I was like, what mining software? So I started digging. I'm trained to do specific type of research. And places and ways that most people are not, and there are ways to appropriately do that carefully without getting yourself in trouble and or exposing who you are and things like that, right? Anyways, so I started doing different types of digging at what's mining, computer mining, things like that. And all of the stuff started coming about Bitcoin. I was like, what's this stuff? So I found the different pieces of software, and I had a whole server rack full of old equipment that the company I was working for was throwing away, just going to literally just destroy it, like throw it through a shredder and be done with it. I was like, oh, I'll take that and I'm gonna play with it. And because one of them was a hypervisor and it had a bunch of stuff where I could make a bunch of VMs and things like that. So I threw it on there and I put it in a VM and I gave it 4 of the cores and it maxed out. I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's what he was doing. Then it started creating the Bitcoin because I was hitting blocks like left and right. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. What is? And then I just started digging into it. That's how I got into it. It was like someone brought me a computer. It wasn't working, but it was working. It was doing what it's supposed to do, right? So that was my like, oh, what is this? And it just fascinated me. It's like, what caused it? And that was the other thing. Like people come to me with viruses on the computers and stuff like that, and they would still be sort of responsive, at least enough for me to be able to shut down things and make things stop, and then remove the virus and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that locked the computer down. I was like, I hadn't seen anything like that. So for me, that was one of those little trigger points going, I need to figure out what this is in case it happens again. That way I can document it and make sure that people in the business, this doesn't happen again kind of thing.
Yeah.
Needless to say, that took me down an entirely different path of like, what in the world is this stuff? Figuring out what it was. I walked off so many cliffs. I had hard drives die with thousands of Bitcoin on them. The drive just died. This is before there were seed words, dude. This is before there were seed words.
And you can't recover those things?
Back then, no. I'm sure you could if I was smart enough to write down the actual private key. And there was no know-how. No one had walked off that cliff yet.
Yeah.
So
it didn't matter as much either. Yeah.
No, it didn't matter then either, really. And at that point, again, there was no real monetary aspect associated to it, for me at least.
Yeah.
And back then we didn't have clean rooms widely available. I don't know if you're familiar with what a clean room is and used for data recovery. They used to.
What is that?
So a clean room is they would actually crack open a hard drive and the platters. It has to be an ultra clean room. That's why it's called that. No dust, no radiation, no anything can come in there. They literally take the platter out, put it on another spindle that reads the data on there, and then it basically copies it off into another hard drive.
Okay.
Back then, those were $1,500 to $2,000 to even attempt to get the data off. And I wasn't going to spend that kind of money on something. I was like, just do my normal stuff, run a magnet over it, drove nails through it, shattered the plates, and tossed it. So yeah. Needless to say, once I realized that, I was like, oh crap. I'm not throwing another hard drive away just in case ever again.
Yeah. Just in case the technology catches up. And so
no, it did. We can do it now.
Yeah.
We can do it now. But yeah, that's what got me into it, man. That was the path that it was just someone brought me a laptop and it wasn't working. And I was like, why isn't it working? And that's just the way I have an engineer's mind, right? Yeah. So I reverse engineered how it was working, and then I figured out this is actually really cool technology. And I remember the moment I was sitting in I was in a townhome or whatever, a little office area. I was sitting in my office, the rack was running behind me. I was like, this is going to fundamentally change humanity because this can't be turned off. Once it's started, it cannot be stopped. And that kind of made me go, oh, everything's going to change. This is like another layer of the internet, or no second coming of the internet. This is a payment system that can't be turned off. This is as I was starting to learn what the smart contracts were and everything. There weren't really smart contracts on Bitcoin, but I was kind of started thinking, because Ethereum came on the scene not too long after that. Litecoin, Ethereum, they started coming. I was like, okay, this is more. I'm certainly going. Business is going to start using this. Yeah, supply chains are going to start using this. And I started really like, I wanted to delete a transaction and I couldn't. I was like, that's going to be very, very, very powerful. So, anyways, sorry, long-winded response to you there, but yeah,
that was great. I was just your comment about saying that once this started, like your realization that it can't be turned off, that this is going to change the world. So I just watched the last Jurassic Park last night. Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen it.
I have not yet.
Have you seen the first Jurassic Park?
It was a long time ago, but yeah.
So Jeff Goldblum's character, Dr. Malcolm, I think Ian Malcolm, his whole thing is chaos theory.
Mhm.
And his whole thing in the first movie was like, hey, look, you're playing with forces beyond your control. Like you've resurrected creatures that have been dead for millions of years that totally controlled the planet back then, and you're interacting with humans. We have no idea how it's going to play out.
Yep. Yep.
Right. And we're basically like on the path to our extinction, or like life as we know it is now over, but you don't
Yep.
realize it. You're
Right.
treating them as like theme park things.
Sure.
Well, your comment about something like Bitcoin, if you've created something, a ledger that's immutable, that can't be changed, that can't be turned off.
Yep.
Right? We're in the early innings. Like we're Jurassic Park 1993. We're creating theme parks out of this stuff potentially. So
yeah.
And then it's interesting watching the movies from like the first one in the early 90s to now, and how they lay it out, the different plots, the type of things, the evolution of the dinosaurs, that type of
Sure.
thing. But so if you apply that to something like Bitcoin or crypto, like where do you think we fall at in that spectrum, and what do you think the future has entail for us?
I like to look at it from a technology life cycle standpoint. You've got the inception of the idea, and then you got the I don't want to say you got the beta test, or the MVP, the beta testing, and then you have, or no, the alpha testing, the beta testing. Those are different phases in a technology life cycle, right? And then you have what do we call it? It's after it's beta tested, it goes to friends and family, or goes to your peers, or I've heard it called peer review kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Then that happens, and once everything's okay, and then it moves to the next thing where you have early adopters. We are in that transition between the peer-to-peer stuff testing into the early adoption stuff, where you open it up to a broader spectrum of people, and you would deploy that, whatever the software is, right, out into the wild, so to speak, of your early adopters. You get their feedback, and then you move into a generally available, and then you move into I would say a production. And then once it's in production, it's legit out in the open. It's widely being used. I think we're in that transition between the peer-to-peer testing into the early adopters. I think we're probably more in, almost the second foot's almost into early adopters as far as the life cycle is concerned. I think that we still have a ways to go to have the generally available, where you kind of see it everywhere, not necessarily from a payment standpoint. That's one. Payments is one facet. This is one of the reasons why, like, here I talk about, like on my show, I'll talk about Maxis from time to time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff about that I don't like or appreciate. Being an OG in the space, I don't appreciate the Maxis I'll be kind. The rude attitude that they show towards folks like me, or like anybody else who is interested in the other projects. I'm not interested in all the projects. I'm interested in projects that make sense, like a business. Like, I would have been interested in Amazon, Google, these different businesses, right? Any of the major retailers that you have out there who were up and coming and having an internet presence, if you will, I would have been more interested in those. They're leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
And they're being rude and disrespectful to the people that even make, like myself. If there wasn't for people like me out there mining and creating and figuring this out, then they wouldn't have what they have today, period. It would have died off and been long gone. Just like any other technology. There's tons of technological ideas out there that make sense, that will be fundamentally changing for humanity, that just don't catch on because the engineers, the people, the builders, the developers, they either don't think it's interesting, or they don't see the end road or where it's going to end up going. And they just say, I'm going to focus on something else. That's realistically what happens. The developers, the engineers, we're the people who go out there and we build that foundation for the overarching, the Maxis, if they will, they use, right. They use that platform later down the road. They didn't even know it existed when I was in there.
Yeah. And now I think it's the only thing that's important.
And then now they think it's the only thing that's important. The thing is that really soon, the Fed's going to stand up their Fed Now stuff, right? You're going to have CBDCs as your payment. It's what it's going to be. It is. And you got stuff around the medical billing stuff. You got the stuff around the medical tracking of different types of medication, or like a live organ, stuff like that. It's tracked now. Well, it's starting to be done inside of a blockchain because a smart contract can automatically trigger different things as it hits different points.
Yeah.
Now, there's all kinds of stuff I know that's being built in the space that people will just blow their minds on what's being done from an automated standpoint.
Yeah.
Humans aren't saying, yep, we're here kind of thing. There's a system doing it, that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's kind of, I hope, answered that question. The life cycle.
Yeah.
We are almost, we're not even at the point to where we're generally available yet. We're barely in the early adopters, barely.
Well, and it makes sense, like when you paint that life cycle, and then you look at the Maxi culture, that they'd arise out of that, because like it seems like it's been around long enough so they can think they have it figured out, but not long enough to where they can know for certain, right? And it's still so early. We have no idea how it's going to evolve. And I mean, have you come across Jeff Booth?
I don't think so. No.
So he wrote the book The Price of Tomorrow, and he's a technology entrepreneur. He falls into the not a toxic maxi, but he's like primarily focused on Bitcoin. In his mind, for the solutions he's aiming for, from my understanding, is he thinks Bitcoin is the solution. But he talks about, if you take a piece of paper and you fold it 50 times, how big is it? All right, if you could theoretically fold it 50 times, because I think you can't get past 7, right?
It would be very, very hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you had some way to cut it. And anyways. Yeah.
So basically it doubles the size each fold. And he's like, when you pose up to people, they'll say, like, it's a fun question to ask people. Because a lot of people are like, oh, like, 2 inches, 20 feet, 10 feet, stuff like that. It would go from here to the sun. Right. So, because it's an exponential growth thing.
Sure.
And his whole thing is like, the fold before, when you're at fold 49, you're halfway to the sun, right?
Right.
And so fold 50 takes you all to the sun. So it's like, that is such a massive, large leap.
Yep.
So when you start thinking about exponential patterns, and we're dealing with something that can make these exponential,
very much so,
very hard to predict how this stuff will evolve in the future.
Right. But sort of. So visionaries like myself, someone who's in technology, sitting there going like that, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, for most everyone else, yes, they don't see where that next step is. And my thing is I'm looking at it going, that next fold is to the sun. Yeah. And this is how it's going to happen. And this is what we're going to do to get there. So that's the kind of mentality that I am with this stuff. That's why, like, on my shows, I talk about the economy. I talk about how it's connected and how Bitcoin's connected and other cryptocurrencies connected, and how these other projects, they're actually businesses, the businesses of tomorrow. You think about like Ethereum, that's a platform for other businesses to build themselves on top of, or like Divi is a business in and of itself that are trying to make crypto more widely adopted around the world, the bank, the unbanked, that kind of stuff, making their system and ecosystem the way that they've done is phenomenal. I haven't seen a foundation like that since Bitcoin, since Ethereum, since Litecoin, and even Digibyte. Is it Digibyte or Dash? I think it was whatever, one of them. There's a node. I built a node back in the day too when it first launched. That took me a month because you had to code. You had to code to get it to work. It's
not user friendly. That's the indication that we are not.
But that's something nowadays, as the technology evolves, like Divi's done, it's a couple clicks and you've got a node running. It's a couple clicks and you're staking.
Yeah.
That has evolved. That stuff back then was like, if you didn't know how to code, if you couldn't even go, and even if you didn't know how to code, if you couldn't go figure it out, you can engineer a way to do it. You couldn't do it. Today,
most people can't figure that out. Right? Most people can't even open a browser window on their computer, unfortunately.
Yeah. So nowadays, fast forward, you got people who are entertaining with 7-second videos. You got people who are looking at that next dopamine, whatever. Well, crypto is going to have to be part of that, because blockchain technology will have to we're going to have to be into a decentralized environment, a decentralized and distributed environment, because of how the society is moving, how humanity is moving in that direction of, they want everything automated, they want it done, and they want it done now.
Yep.
It's just kind of, and blockchain can solve some of that. It can provide some of those things, not everything, but it can. It's not the silver bullet, by the way. Blockchain doesn't fix everything. It doesn't evolve everything. It doesn't improve everything. There are certain things it just doesn't make sense for. It's too much of a lift. It doesn't make sense for.
Yeah, where you could use like a centralized database or something else.
Sure. It is a database, right? If you think about it. So from a technology perspective, we have infrastructure, right? So I'm an infrastructure engineer. It's what I've done most recently. And you think about databases, compute, memory, and hard drive space. That is what a blockchain is now.
Yeah.
You get down to the nuts and bolts of what it is underneath. That is what it is, except it's an automated system as well. That piece is what gives it the most, I think, powerful part around blockchain, and why I really get frustrated around with Maxis, because Bitcoin is a one-trick pony. It's a monetary system, and that's it. You don't want to run smart contracts on the Bitcoin platform.
No.
That algorithm is not designed for that. It's just not.
Yeah.
It is very robust, very secure, and it is clunky and on purpose, because it is meant to be a store or transfer of value, and that's it. It's not meant to run a business on. It just isn't.
Yeah. So that's a good thing for some purposes and bad for others, right?
Correct. And that's why I think other blockchains coming on, doing different pieces, providing a not necessarily siloing themselves, but there's stuff out there that I've looked at. You look at Proppy with the NFT buying and selling a home. You look at Salt for lending, right? You look at Divvy for making the ability to have the residual income, have the payment system, and have the store of value inside of a wallet, things like that, making it easy for the masses.
Yep.
You look at projects like Populous, where they're literally a payment processing invoicing system, but it's specific inside of a blockchain, right? You think something like Polygon, where it can take all those different blockchains and they can all communicate together, right? I think Polygon's going to end up being the internet of blockchains, because they're setting themselves up to be that, right? They're solving a need that the world of blockchain doesn't even realize necessarily that they need yet. They're all going to need interoperability. I can't say that word. They're all going to need to be able to communicate with each other, because they're going to have themselves building themselves specific for specific things, which needs to happen.
Yeah.
But they also need to be able to communicate across platforms. And that, I think, is what Polygon is working towards providing. I'm all over the place, dude. Sorry.
No, it's great. It's fascinating, because there's so much to this. So I could think about, or a thought that's an image that has like been in my mind, is like the Bitcoin singularity, where basically it punches a hole in reality and creates a whole new reality.
Correct.
And whenever that happens, right, if there's just a void, but now like air and life and sunlight and things can move into that space, you have a whole new ecosystem evolving, and it's really young and immature. And so we're gonna go through that whole stage of evolution. You're gonna see all these new creatures or new organisms start sprouting and then finding their niches. And obviously a lot of them aren't going to survive. Like if you look back historically on how the earth evolved and life evolved on earth, most of the organisms failed. But right, you're going to get ones that start, taking hold of that niche in that environment, and then they're going to lock themselves in that position. And other ones are going to be like, well, we can't really compete with that one, so we're not going to compete in that niche. We're going to specialize, like the sparrows on what's the island? Anyways,
I don't know.
If you study islands, like an evolution of species on islands, like sometimes you'll get like lemurs on Madagascar, for example.
Right. Sure. How'd they get there? That kind of stuff.
They'll have like unique niches that they have. So that sounds like what you're talking about with some of these blockchains, is that eventually, like right now, there's still a lot of competition for some of the main pieces of the pie, the foundational pieces. But eventually you start seeing them branch out and niche down and specialize.
Exactly. And that's kind of where I'm sitting here, and I have attempted to have those types of conversations with Maxis, and they're just like, you know what, I'm done with this conversation, and they just walk away. And I'm like, you're leaving money on the table. You're ignoring the evolution of this technology, of the world of the internet as we know it. Right. When the internet was first created, you had 404, page not found. I think it was 403, payment system not found. And nobody realized back then that realistically, probably, and whenever they set that up, was meant to be this digital currency, this means of exchange across the internet. And that is when now we're moving into that with the Fed and China and the other countries they're standing up their CBDCs now. I've followed a guy by the name of Cliff I for a long time. I don't know if you have read his reports or anything.
I've read several of them.
Okay, talks about sovereign coins a lot. Now we're seeing them, right? They're going to fail because they're going to build in all these tracking and all this other stuff into their systems, and people are going to say, I want freedom. They're going to go back to the blockchain. The blockchain, the Bitcoin, the Litecoin, the Divvy, the different things for means of exchange. That's what
they can opt out.
Right. Well, for now,
they can opt out for now, as long as, the only way to prevent people from opting out is top-down authoritarian control.
Correct.
And that doesn't seem to work universally. It seems to
It,
work in specific locations for a
which
period of
is
time.
what gives Bitcoin and Litecoin and other the cryptocurrency in general, blockchain technology in general, its power.
Yeah.
Because, and this is why I say it's freedom for humanity, because for the longest time, the world has been controlled by money, right? And who
Mhm.
controls the money? Different bankers, different banking
Yep.
families and stuff like that, right? And they have had their hand in influencing, whether good or bad, all kinds of scenarios throughout the world, right? Well, now the people of the world have the ability to say, I don't want you to control what happens anymore. Think about the high inflation we have right now. They printed so much money. What are you going to do with that? You can't absorb that. You can't pull it back in, right? That can't happen with crypto.
Yeah.
There's that Bitcoin only has 21 million. People are like, there's not enough to go around. I'm like, actually, every Bitcoin can be divided by 100 million
Yeah.
onto a Satoshi. And then they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah, the more you know, right?
Yeah.
And it's just people, the talking heads, and even on the YouTubers and stuff now, the talking heads of YouTube, they're like, swing this way, swing that way, this and that. And they're just tossed to and fro like a freaking wave. And it's like, stay on point, guys and gals.
Yeah.
There's
Stay
a
focused.
bigger picture here. Sure, you can make money in US dollars. Great. The US dollar is failing. What are
Mhm.
you going to do when that happens?
Yeah.
What's next? How are you going to get through to the other side of that storm when it comes? And no one's recognizing that this is on the other side of that. And
Yeah.
fortunately, we got to go through a bunch of crap to get there. But Bitcoin in general, cryptos in general, is what's on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's our job to build it.
yeah. And help people. This is the Jeff Booth quote again: is build the bridge to the other side,
Right.
right? And there's multiple ways you can do it. Like you told your story about you were fixing someone's computer, and you're like, "What is this problem? I haven't seen this before," and that led you down the rabbit hole.
Correct.
And like, so we all have our unique origin story, our entry into this market or into this space. And I think it's cool because they're all different, right? And
Yes.
there's still, because people, we're not binary. People
Nope.
exist across a spectrum with lots of
Yep.
different wants, needs, desires, values, different stages in their life that necessitate different areas of focus. And so that just takes time to
Yep.
communicate that to people and to bring people in. And people are going to have lots of different entry points, which is why I don't like the Maxi argument a lot.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you have to, just like Bitcoin, if you're doing altcoins or shit coins, then you're a scammer. It's like, but some people don't even realize, or sometimes people are just curious with the technology, right?
Right.
They're just like trying to learn. They're not ready to commit to this dogmatic vision, and they
Right.
don't necessarily have to.
They don't have to. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like you look at, like, I was at Bitcoin 2022 and Mark Moss, who is very big Maxi,
Yeah.
and Kevin O'Leary were having a debate on stage, on camera, whatever. I don't know what they were doing. I couldn't hear what they're saying,
Yeah.
but you could just tell that Kevin O'Leary is not a Maxi.
No,
And he's
not.
very, very open about how he looks at the
Yeah.
technology and advancements that's going to bring for humanity. And you could see the kind of the back and forth going on. And I was just like, they kind of getting frustrated with each other. It was just like, just Mark, just listen to him. I mean,
Yeah.
hear what he has to say. It's like they don't even want to listen.
And that's a
you know?
problem.
And after that, it was really cool. I got to meet Kevin and just shook his hand real quick, told him, was like, you're not wrong in what you're saying. I've been in this longer than most. Don't stop. Use your platform, get people to pay attention that there are other businesses.
Yeah.
They're projects, they're crypto, but they're businesses. They are
Mhm.
usually for-profit businesses, right? And they're building a technology that is going to fundamentally, in part or in a major way, fundamentally change how humanity interacts with each other in just about every way.
Yeah. And I think one thing that is important that I've thought about a lot is because I like Bitcoin. I'm newer to the space than you,
Mhm.
and I think it's fascinating. I think it has a ton of potential, and like
Mhm.
I still think it's totally untapped, right? When that
It is.
in that new world environment, I kind of picture two things. Like one where, like, in theory, Bitcoin could be a foundation where the whole new environment starts building on top of that, and that crowds out the other ecosystem. Or it could just be a one organism in that ecosystem,
Yep.
and the ecosystem, and it's not the base layer. It's not the base layer of everything.
Right.
And those are two
Which,
different potential outcomes. And there's probably thousands of different outcomes
sure.
to consider, and that are possible.
From my perspective on that particular one, I would say it's just one part of the ecosystem. The reason I say that is because when when the world uses it eventually as a means of exchange, it will be a primary store of value, very much like gold and silver is.
Mhm.
Nations will settle debts between each other with Bitcoin, right? Because of its value, because of its store of value.
Yep.
People won't spend Bitcoin necessarily. They might,
Yeah.
but they won't spend it necessarily. They may trade it into something like Litecoin or something like Divi or something that's an easier, faster method of obtaining it. They could take, say Bitcoin's $1 million. You take a small fraction of that, you put it into your other account, very much like a savings account versus a checking account, right? And then you would end up taking that and spending it on what you're going to buy. You want to go buy another car? Great. Bink, you're done.
Yeah.
But you do that transaction first. That way the Bitcoin never actually leaves your wallet, your control, right? People, once they realize the value that this has, they aren't going to want to let it go.
Yeah.
That's why I say on my show all the time, like, you got a double liquidity crunch coming. This next year is the year before the next halving, right? And there's people like me. There's a lot of people like me. I don't have tons. Like I said, I sent a friend 5,000 at one point. I mean, I was literally learning what the technology was doing, right?
Yeah.
There was no monetary aspect to me back then. I wanted to learn what it did. Anyways, you think about that, and people are going to say, I'm not touching that. I'm not letting go of what I have. The exchanges will dry up and no one will be able to buy it anymore.
Yeah.
People who have it will be able to name their price because it will be in that much of a demand, because it will be a store of value.
Yeah. And it'll be even a better store of value once that happens.
Sure. But you're also at that point, there will not be a US dollar monetary or a denomination in US dollars. I don't know what it will be. I say often, whenever I have conversations with people, go find out how many bars of gold you can buy with a Bitcoin. How many bars of silver you can buy with how many ounces,
Something
right?
real.
And that is a real value that you can say, okay, my Bitcoin's worth this much, right?
Yeah.
Do that calculation. I did a spreadsheet. It's simple.
Yeah. Like how many ounces of silver, right? How many
Right,
ounces of gold?
right. That gives you I have a real tangible asset that I can change this into, because I don't want a dollar. I don't value this in dollar. I think I say also often that crypto is the exit strategy. It's a stock market, and as the dollar fails, which they already on their way out. This is a global thing, by the way. People are going to say, crap, they're going to pull out into cash like they always do, and the market will tank and they'll be in dry powder. And then they'll sit there and go that it will cause a hyperinflationary event because that will be more velocity of dollars available, right? And then
in the assets that people want.
Correct. And in my opinion, those stocks will just completely implode on themselves. They may come back up at some point, and people may put their money back in there at some point, maybe. But I think in order to protect their purchasing power with what they are able to, they will look for gold, silver, which they won't really be able to find. At first, they'll be able to, but very little.
Yeah.
But they will go right into crypto because it's an easy move.
Yeah.
It's a very easy move. They're not going to go into real estate because real estate is going to be collapsing at the same time. So
and liquid and tough to get out of, tough to move.
Correct. I think I was actually having a conversation with someone yesterday. That for me, instead of getting into real estate from a residual income standpoint, going into a crypto for residual income would be a significantly better option for me. And he just kind of went, that's kind of weird. Why? I was like, well, if I was going to park $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 into a house, great. I'm go rent it out. Great. I got to take, I have to have renter's insurance. I have to have, homeowner's insurance. I have to have, make sure that there is, PMI, all the, not PMI. What's the thing called? The,
property management stuff, like
all that stuff. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Tenants,
like all that. You got to make sure that's always there. Right.
Yeah.
And then if you ever wanted to liquidate your initial investment, you got to go through a whole process to do all that. Like, just take that money, put it into a crypto asset that's going to earn you more. It's going to fluctuate, but over time it will earn you more. And if you ever need it, it's liquid.
Yeah.
There's not another asset like that does that.
Yeah.
So
I guess the only mathematical trade-off people would try to push back on is the leverage you can get for real estate versus into crypto. But that's a whole game in itself, right? If
that is in and of itself a whole game, but then you have to worry about the risk of the Wall Street sitting there playing with the CDOs and the securities and stuff like that, trying to actually create this other asset class using the mortgages as the underlying asset. And it's like, well, people quit, like in 2008, people quit paying the mortgages.
Yeah.
We're hitting that again. Citi and the Bank of America just announced that they're gonna the no income verification, no credit check, no blah 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 for low income and or minorities, right?
Mhm.
That we're doing it again. Doing it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's gonna be well, and I live in a near Vale, and the price increases. Like I have a friend who bought a place down the street, and it was like 400,000 or so when he bought it. And this house is not a $400,000 house, right? At least by like traditionally of what you thought $400,000 was. Obviously, that's changed, due to inflation and just
Yep.
and the devaluation of the currency happens so much faster than our perception of the
Right.
value of currency,
Right.
which is such a terrible trick, right?
Yep. It's a hidden tax.
Yeah, and
fast one too.
He bought it for like $400,000 in the past, like right in 2020, and then now it's worth over $600,000. And this is not a nice place, so it's worth over $500,000. Like the location's okay, like it's not in like a great neighborhood. It's not like it's not like nice. It doesn't have a bunch of land. It's just like proximity to the Vale Valley.
Mhm.
But the problem with that is how are you gonna the people that live here, like how are they gonna be able to pay rent? Because in order for them to be able to pay rent, like you have to, the employers, businesses have to jack up their salaries or jack up what they pay hourly or jack up their prices to the extreme. And there's a breaking point. Like you can only do that so much before like business falls off. People are like, well, I guess we can't go out. Like even the really rich people, they're like, well, we have a house in Vale. Our property's going up in value, but it's expensive to go there. So we're just going to go somewhere else.
Right.
So one less.
Right. Yeah, so it is around here. Like, a normal restaurant that we would go to, at least once or twice a week. And we're sitting there, it was like, let's say $30 for the whole family.
Yeah.
It's like almost $70 now.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not. This is like maybe once a month kind of thing, and people are doing that all over the place now. You see, like the little town is always like, you couldn't find a parking space. We went over there the other day. There's parking everywhere.
Yeah.
On a weekend. It's like, whoa, what the heck? What is like all of a sudden, like someone snapped their fingers and like people just stopped.
Yeah.
And so it's about to get bad.
It's like like before a tsunami or before like a natural disaster, the animals start getting quiet, or like you see the birds moving, and so I feel like there's some of those going through society now that it's like something's gonna happen, and we all can feel it. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about this stuff. Like we can tell something's gonna happen, but what and when.
Right. That's the thing, is what and when. I don't think the when. I don't like predicting stuff.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, like it really feels like we're close. I don't know what's gonna happen. No one does. If they say they do, then they're just full of shit. It's just kind of like, okay, no. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like something from this system. You can tell there's something wrong. Like you can feel it, you can see it in the day to day. You go to the grocery store, it's like, it's like quadrupled, right? So like, my wife and I went on an anniversary trip, and we went to go look at the same place we went to before, and it's quadrupled in price 1 year later.
That's
stupid.
Wild.
Like, that's just the stay in that place. I did not even pay for the flight, the stay, the rental car, and eating out, and all the other stuff. Everything included. It wasn't even a quarter of what it cost just to stay in there now, in that same place now.
Yeah.
Something's up. Something's not working. The system broke somewhere, and I actually know where it broke, and they can't fix it.
That's what everyone says. It's run away.
It's like a hole in the boat that's too big to repair.
Yeah. And so it's got to speed up the water coming in, but the water is speeding up at the same time, or speed up the water going out, but the water coming in at the same or greater pace.
Right. I'd say it's even much greater pace now at this point. There's no way. Raising the rates as much as they've been raising the rates is not anywhere near enough, right? So the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. From 1913 to 2020, they printed 20% of the current monetary supply. From 2020 to today, that's that 80% that they printed. There's not a sponge big enough, except maybe Bitcoin, that could absorb that that fiat that they printed. There's not enough. There's just not enough. And then you got other geopolitical stuff going on. China is no longer using the dollar for stuff, or the petrodollar. Russia is no longer doing the petrodollar. You got all these other countries that are just like, why do we need the dollar? Right? You got Bitcoin, you've got this, you've got that, you've got gold, you got silver. We'll agree to do this. We're going to circumvent the U.S. entirely.
Yeah. Well, especially the emerging economies that are just getting slammed with the, with the dollar being strong right now. Like that's not good for them. Not to mention, just like all the taxes and fees that it takes to get the dollars back. If you work in the United States and you have family to live over there, that's not good. And there's a solution, right? That's the thing, is there's a solution that's available that works.
Bitcoin. It works every time. It's fantastic.
And so one question I have, and so we kind of talked about this on Twitter, was people's time horizons. So I do really like with Bitcoin, like when you go down that rabbit hole where you start to learn about high time preference and low time preference. And I do like, I think everyone's better off if they adopt a more low time preference strategy for their lives, not trying to always be in that high time preference where I need things now. Right. And I think we live in a high time preference world. We really do. But I think what happens is because us as people, we're on a human time frame, and I think our human time frame is just predisposed to be high time preference. Because if you think about the age of the earth and just the evolution of just anything other than us, like that's been here for a while, it's thousands and millions of years, billions.
Sure.
And I think people like the idea of low time preference, and it starts working out, but I don't think they fully adjust. So when they look at something like Bitcoin, they may go maxi because they think it might happen within a year, 2 years, 3 years, but the evolution is probably going to take 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Right?
Maybe
if it goes fast.
Maybe. And the reason I say maybe is because on one hand, historically speaking, for the adoption and things like that to take place, yeah, sure. But it's technology. Technological adoption takes about 10 years.
Okay.
We're year 11 and going on 12 now soon. And you think about that standpoint, you got BlackRock, Citadel, banking sectors, they're going into it now. They're opening their trading platforms into this. Like BlackRock just partnered with Coinbase to open their, I forget what it's called, their platform to connect into Coinbase to do trading for their customers. They are the biggest assets under management platform or asset management company to ever get into this stuff. And they're the big boys. They're opening it up. That's adoption. That is a big time adoption. I saw another article today. I forget who it was, but there's more adoption taking place, and it's from the banking sectors. What's the old saying? First they ignore you, then they notice you, then they
like they ignore you, then they fight you, then they join you, or something like that.
I think it's ignore you, notice you, fight you, and then it's join you, or accept you and then join you.
Yeah.
It's like 5.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're at that fight you / accept you stage, right? Now we're getting the fighting, I think, because they're going to say, oh, we're going to actually go create our own now. They're not going to join yet, but they're going to try to offer another solution. And that other solution is you got to download this wallet, and it's going to have access to everything on your device. Yeah. Everything. And then they're going to have, come again?
They already do. Like, have you, someone read, there was a video.
I know.
Someone reading the TikTok's terms of service, and it has access to all of your information.
Yeah, it does. Nobody reads the terms of use. I actually thought about building a crypto miner for mobile devices that followed the moon. And in the terms of use, and they have to click accept to do it. And then by clicking, no one reads them. Yeah. Right? By clicking accept, the terms of use at night while it was on the charger and connected to Wi-Fi, it would mine crypto and it would follow the moon. And you'd have the biggest and the largest mine in the world by doing that. If you had a big enough game or application that someone needed or wanted to use. Yeah. You watch. That FedNow will probably do something like that, where it will mine in the device Bitcoin and not the CBDC. They will try to figure out another way to actually go and create their own stash of Bitcoin, because they know that their stuff's not going to last. Once people start reading the terms of use and start getting out in the public, start realizing that every transaction is 100% traceable. Oh, you want to go buy that firearm? Or, oh, you want to go buy that house in that region in that place? Oh, I'm sorry, we got too many people of your ethnicity out there. You can't do that. Or you don't need that firearm because it's got too big of a magazine or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They could sit there and deny that transaction by simply setting settings inside of the system. It is that easy to do with inside of blockchain. That will force people to go, I don't want that, I don't need that in my life, and they will move over into Bitcoin and Litecoin and other things. That's really, really what I think is going to end up happening. They'll try a couple times, I think, but it will fail, and then eventually they will accept it as legal tender, just like El Salvador did. And it will become I don't necessarily say a global monetary standard, but it will be accepted as the people. We decide what happens, right?
Yeah.
There's more of us than them.
It's like have you come across Jason Lowry?
The name sounds familiar.
So he likes to talk. I think he's at MIT. He's in the military, so people don't like him for that. But his whole thing is proof of work and why it's so powerful and why it's so important. And he kind of relates it to being like a new weapon technology, right? That's transformation.
That's where I've heard. Yes,
Yeah.
I have heard of this. Yes,
and fascinating stuff, right? But how it basically gives people the ability to countervail any sort of large states attacks on their sovereignty when it comes to their property.
Yep, absolutely. And that is proof of work is extremely important from that standpoint. And I really think a lot of people don't realize this about what Ethereum just did. They just became very centralized. There's only a few entities that actually hold the vast majority of the validating power right now. It hasn't re-decentralized yet.
Yeah,
I don't even know if it will.
Well, he's been talking a lot about that, and so I was going to ask you about that because that's I think it's important for people to understand this. So if you're listening, like I think it's important to understand the dynamics between proof of work, proof of stake, and how they relate to each other. Do they compete? Where do they compete? Which one's more relevant in one situation versus another one? And one tweet the Jason guy made, he was like, when we were settling everything in gold, when gold was the reserve currency, the reserve thing, right? Mm-hmm. It actually took work to get the gold, right? You had it work to actually represent the money. But as soon as you went off that and started doing fractional reserve, you no longer had work. We untethered the monetary system from work. So it could be abused, and you had no way to countervail that other than going to war with the country producing the money and killing them and forcing them at the end of a gun to change their system or change their rules.
That's happened all throughout history.
Yeah. And he's like, what Ethereum just did is they just detached themselves from work. And now they're in a system that it could become mathematically impossible to countervail the majority stakers or the majority owners of the network. And that's a real issue.
It's a very real issue, and it's a very big problem. And that's fine for a platform like Ethereum. And a lot of people don't realize Ethereum is not a cryptocurrency. It is a monetized token. Mm-hmm. It is a business platform. It is a blockchain platform. It is not a cryptocurrency per se. Mm-hmm. It does have a monetary aspect to it. It does have a monetary value associated to it. And the people don't realize that the currency or sound money is Bitcoin. It's Litecoin. It's any kind of proof of work thing. Even before they went from proof of work to proof of stake, they were still a monetized token because they were designed to be a smart contract platform.
Yeah.
Bitcoin isn't. Bitcoin is designed to be a means of exchange. Litecoin's the same thing, a means of exchange. Mm-hmm. Litecoin can be adjusted because Charlie Lee did some things when he adjusted that, and he forked Bitcoin and made Litecoin, and he made some adjustments. Those were things looking in the future if there was ever a need to do smart contract related stuff or any kinds of like Mimblewimble, right? The privacy type stuff, which they're implementing now, right? He had some foresight in that where you could do that type of stuff on that algorithm, because script algorithm is actually much more robust and faster than the SHA-256. Mm-hmm. SHA-256 is very clunky. It's very secure. Not saying the Litecoin's not secure, not saying that script is secure, but at the same time, it's one of those, we will when you move in that direction away from the proof of work, you are opening yourself up to that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it is what it is, and you got to realize what you're doing. So one of the things I really like about Divi is because theirs is a hybrid. There is mining going on in the background, but there is also the staking as well.
Yeah.
It's both, which is, I think, an interesting way to approach that. And I would love to see more of that type of an environment come out to where it gives the distributed of the people get to stake, but centrally inside the business, there is actual proof of work going on.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different things, a lot of different ways to skin that cat. But like you said, if you want to prevent any kind of, we'll call it 51% attack, the proof of work makes the most sense. If you want to create a means of exchange or a real store of value, the proof of work makes the most sense. The other ones in my mind are businesses, and they are designed as launching pads for other businesses. That's what Ethereum realistically was. Now Polygon's been proof of stake, but Polygon I think will be the internet of blockchains, because there will need to be a way to do that interoperability, like we mentioned before. And that is very valuable in and of itself, but it's not all about money in this space anymore, right? It's not all about the value in there anymore. It is 100% now we're building the technology of tomorrow. And I think people need to really differentiate that between each other, right? And I think that's where the whole Maxi comment, right? Great, you go have that. It's like you're just investing in the DAO and that's it. Or you're just investing in Amazon and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Have fun with that. You're pinholing yourself and you're leaving money on the table.
I agree. And I think they close the door on a lot of people that could use and want their help and insights. And they have good points, but I think there's too much hostility in lots of those points. And that there is nuance, and you don't have to be 100% in to one thing, right? We don't operate like that in our daily lives.
Right? You shouldn't put your eggs in one basket. Why would you? I mean, you don't eat the same thing for lunch every day. Most people don't. I mean, come on.
I mean, maybe if we had like an AI running us, we would do that. It just optimize our lives perfectly, but that's a whole other problem,
It's
that
very
never ends well.
Yes and no.
Stories. But you've been going about an hour, and so I want to start wrapping it up. And for someone, I want to ask you a couple questions. For someone who's listening to this that is new to the space, what's a good way what would you recommend they do to start? Like how would you recommend they approach this from a mindset and then an action perspective?
I would learn how the monetary system works first and foremost. And this is something that I tell friends and family whenever they want me to coach them or teach them around cryptocurrency, and not necessarily blockchain, but cryptocurrency. And why is it so important, right? Why is Bitcoin such a big deal to me, right? And there's a couple of books I prefer them to read before we really kind of get down into learning anything, because I'll say stuff that they will just go, why? No, that doesn't make sense. And one of those is The Creature from Jekyll Island by Gilbert Griffin. And that explains in depth how the Federal Reserve works and how our current monetary system came to be, right? It's basically a big history lesson that's invaluable in my opinion, because there's history in there that is not talked about in regular history books. And you can go find it, but it'll explain, and you can it'll make you flip your thinking on how all this works, right? And then the second book I like them to read is Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's book. I'd love to actually have him on my show to talk about the residual income aspect of crypto. He's into Bitcoin, great, but there's a lot more you could do when you're really big into real estate and residual income, buddy. I would love to have a conversation with him. Around that piece. But those two things, I have people go into that route first. And the reason being is because if you don't know where you've been, you're not going to know where you're going. Okay. And then the next thing is that I have people come have a conversation with me, or find YouTube shows like this, or find actual real content of what is going on in the Bitcoin space, the blockchain space. Visit some of the conferences, go talk to different people, you can talk to some of the other influencers. They may, get as many opinions and educated opinions as you can. And then just start your education on learning and reading. Read the Bitcoin white paper, read the white papers, read the technical papers. If that's not your thing, just go learn what they do and how they work. Talk to somebody who has. I have a business. The other people in our circles have businesses where you have that one-on-one consultation type stuff, where if you just don't know or you don't get it, that conversation, that time matters. It makes that much of a difference. But that's what I always tell people. I always tell them, hey, read this book, and then come back to me and let's talk. Because I know you have questions about all that, but to answer why Bitcoin is so important to me, you need to understand that stuff, and then you'll understand when I say this, and this. Because I'll say in whatever it is, I'll say it I'll say this, this, and this, and then just kind of go, well, that doesn't make sense. We already have that, and that, and that. And I'm like, so okay, so instant payments across the internet. Well, it's like, well, we can do that with Cash App. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the same. And they're like, yes, it is. I'm like, no, it's not
No.
at all.
Yeah. It's not. Try to withdraw that immediatay.
Yeah, go ahead. Doesn't
Try
work.
not yeah. Okay.
So,
I think that's great advice. And so the next question is, so I'm reading a book called How to Get Rich, and it's by it's a really good book actually. It's by Felix Dennis, who's the founder of Maxim magazine. So he basically is talking about just things he's learned in building and making hundreds of millions of dollars.
sure.
Life lessons. One of the things he says is like, you got to take on risk, right? You got to cut loose. You got to break free from the matrix that is your standard reality, because most people are in that of just go to college, get a job, work my job 9 to 5, right? Then retire, right? And you have to break free of that if you're going to do anything, if you're going to acquire wealth or see the world from a new perspective. And one of the things he says is like, if you're starting a business, right, you should start a business where there's money and where more money is going to be, right? That is growing, and not just something like, he gave the example of like car dealerships. It's tried and true, right? Unless you come up with some innovation for car dealerships, you probably shouldn't start a business in a car dealership,
right?
If you're trying to amass massive amounts of wealth,
right?
Crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin is a new frontier of things, and there's a ton of money in the space now, and it looks like there's going to be a ton more money in the space going forward. But for the entrepreneurs out there, what advice would you give them to like look into this space and building in this space? How would you?
So that's part of the reason why I actually started my company, and I didn't name it. My wife actually helped me get the name right for it. Excuse me. I wanted a single word that could be recognizable and a good brand. And then I was going to have blockchain consulting on it, because blockchain consulting is broad.
Yeah.
It's very broad because it touches a lot of facets. And as you can tell, I am very much so a visionary, and I can hear a business use case or a business problem, and I can sit there and say, can this? And then sometimes I can connect the dots, right? The water will start flowing in the direction it's going to go. And a lot of times blockchain can solve it, but not always. But finding the solution is kind of the thing, right? There's a big, massive frontier, like you said, in this space when it comes to people don't know what this is, just simple education stuff. Businesses don't know what that is. They sure don't know how to go build it. I'll tell you right now, it's expensive. You want to go hire full-time staff to do blockchain, you're going to have to cough up a ton of money, like a lot. So standing up a business like mine where I can connect different kind of incubators with a business, like I've had 2 businesses come to me and they're like, hey, I want to start doing this. I'm like, great, let's get this going. And then just consult on the job. Just make sure the job gets completed, make sure that kind of stuff. There is so much out there for this. Businesses are we're coming into a time of economic uncertainty, right? How does a business in a recession actually stay alive? They cut costs. Well, how do they cut costs? They automate now. How can you automate? You can implement blockchain technology. Say a lot of money gets spent on any retailer. The backbone is the supply chain.
Yeah.
Supply chain is a really big use case for blockchain technology. If appropriately implemented. It can be a headache otherwise.
Yes.
That implementation, learning how to do that kind of stuff. There's tons of people out there, I'm sure we'll see this, that are into the supply chain realm. Learn blockchain because you're going to save your business with it. I'm not kidding, right? So this is kind of this is where go educate yourself, figure out what you kind of want to do in the blockchain, which ones make sense, which ones don't make sense, how does it work, how do the nuts and bolts work, get into the weeds of it, and then go back to your businesses. If you work for someone else, or go start a business, go start an entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur, get that risk, like you're saying, get out there, put your neck out there and try.
I have a program for that.
Yeah, you do. You guys should pay attention to the program. If you don't, you really need to. Oh yeah. No. Yeah, that's kind of one of those things. Like it is a vast majority, and there's no one doing this.
Yeah.
There are very few companies out there doing my stuff. I had one company come to me like, well, we're talking to other different people and different outfits and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, who? I probably know them. And it wasn't anyone in the blockchain space. It was just a group of developers and stuff. They're like, we don't know how to do that. And I'm like, I know. There's very few people who know how to do that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyways, hope that answered that question for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's great. So where can people find you? Because you have a show. How can people get in touch with you?
So I have a YouTube show. It's go to thepapajoshow.com. It's Papa Joe, just like this right here.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's like backwards. Yeah, that just go to spelling just like this, the logo there. And thepapajoshow.com, and that's got all my socials and all that stuff there as well. Also, if you were more into the business stuff, want to learn more about that, go to Aster, ASTER, blockchainconsulting.com. And that's my business. You can check that out as well. And I do one-on-ones, and then I also do like a more of a business type thing where it's a statement of work type of scenario where there's like a legit, I'm going to work with you a couple months. You know, I've had a few projects come to me and they're like, I want to accept crypto, and they're just local mom and pops, you know, shops and whatnot.
Mhm.
You know, I will write some sort of contract up. We'll do an implementation, usually a set price kind of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of stuff. There's both sides to it. So I'm also working on another piece that I'm not sure I'm going to do yet.
All right.
But that's more in the asset management stuff. So I don't know if I want to touch that right now. I've had a lot of interest in that from different friends and family, and even some told people like, do you do this for a living? I'm like, there's no licensing in this. If we do, I have to write a very special contract for you, kind of thing. But that's just one of those. I just don't know right now. So we'll see.
That's fair. Well, if you want to find out more about that, go check him out on Papa Joe Show. Find his channel, follow him on socials. He knows what he's talking about, so he definitely can help you out, or at least point you in the right direction.
Yep.
So, Papa Joe, thanks so much for being on the show. Wish you the best.
Absolutely, man.
Look forward to staying in touch, and I look forward to having you on a show later on once you can make some more reveals.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love it, man. Appreciate you having me on. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Yeah.